I can't believe this is going to happen. It's fantastic. This is episode 80 of the business Q&A that we've been doing for, well, 80 weeks now. It's fantastic to have you guys here. Thank you very much for joining in. YouTube, thank you for joining, and Facebook as well. It's not 18, it's 80 episodes of this. I'm absolutely blown away that we've got this far. I expected it to be going, well and be having fun and things like that, but so many people jumping in. Thank you, every one of you, for jumping in for this. Episode 80 is blowing my mind. It's crazy. So what can I say? As I said, it's not 8, it's not 18, it's 80 episodes. You guys are phenomenal. If we're averaging 8 odd questions per episode, that's like 650-ish almost questions across the past year and a half or so. You guys are amazing. I really, really love the support. Thanks so much. I was going to ask for, well, I was asking about themes for today. Do you know what? Just ask anything. So it's an AMA, ask me anything. I've got a load of questions fire through. There's a few things that we want to talk about. Fear of missing out, we're going to cover today. We're going to look at things like working with new types of routes to market, so things like affiliate marketing. We're also going to look at LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much, everyone jumping in here. Vinu, William, great comments there. Thank you. It's great to have you on here. Let me know, guys, where are you listening in from? I know there's a lot of often the usual faces, but some new people as well. So thank you. So for episode 70, I'm used to saying, right? Episode 80. If you have a question, I want you to stick it there in the comments. Let's get into those as well. But otherwise, it's a complete free-for-all. So any question you like, I'll ask. And thanks in advance to those of you who are listening on the replay. If you have any questions, I, of course, always jump in and answer those as well. But yeah, let's jump in. So first question here is from Daniel Nunez. He says, a jack of all trades is a master of nothing. Richard, can you offer suggestions on how to define and become an authority in your niche? This is the thing I've been talking about for a while, especially with the Monetize You course. I think that so many people overthink this, Daniel. I really think the problem is that people are paralyzed. I was talking about this in a recent interview. People are paralyzed with fear that they're going to end up choosing a path or a business or something that is the wrong route, as if they can't then pivot or change. And what's such a shame is that people do nothing or don't start because they're worried about being half-hearted and being too far down the road before they can come back again. It's rubbish. And the reason why I know this is because I've done it. And the solution here is to not overthink. The solution is just to start with something that feels about right. Now, that seems like a really stupid idea, right? But it isn't, because unless you've got this brainwave that's come to you, what you need to do is say, if I'm going to start building a business of my own, I need to just begin on something that seems probably about right. Taekwondo, for me, because I've been doing it for like 12 years at the time, felt about right. So I jumped in on that. It's as simple as that. And I thought, you know what, let's start building some academies. And very quickly, it became apparent that, yeah, it was a fun hobby and I liked teaching it, but did I want to do this did I want it to be the thing I was defined by and known for? No, not really. I really enjoyed building the businesses instead, and I enjoyed the consulting in the past, and so I kind of resurrected that, and that was my pivot point. Do something, because what you find is that you start to evolve an awareness of what it is you really enjoy doing. And I suppose the short version is, if you're not on the pitch practicing your game, you can't work out what position you're best to play in, right? You'll never know until you actually get on the pitch and try it. You might be, let's use Super Bowl analogies, you might be, a quarterback, but you don't know it unless you actually go try it and play and see what happens. Do you see what I mean? So get on the pitch, try something, and you'll soon go, do you know what, this is rubbish. What do I want to do more of in this job? What do I want to do less of? And then go from there, really. And I think that even when you get the thing you want to do, you then continually pivot and change direction slightly as you go. And that's just so important to get right. So have patience as well, because what you find is that your niche will define itself with you. It's good to kind of sit down and hash it out on paper, but as you go, you kind of find your voice. As you go, you find your niche. You get feedback from the front line. You can't write that down on a piece of paper before you started. You've got to get out there and actually hear what people have to say. give your product or service to a couple of hundred people and get some feedback from them. How do you feel about the product you're getting out there? Do you enjoy it? And you know what? You might love it, and then it's weird because you end up doing things that you never thought you would do because you can't plan for it. You can't simulate it. You've got to go out and practice a bit. And I think if you manage your expectations right, if you put your head in the right place, what will happen is you go out there and start something that feels probably quite right. And if you go out there with the understanding that probably it won't be the thing that's right for you, very few people will jump on their first business idea and that's their thing forever. You know, you evolve and pivot as you go. I know a great business guy who is a big thing he started with was building a Facebook group that he then leveraged to try and sell them stuff. It didn't really work. And then he built an Instagram bot. That was great, but then it was shut down because, you know, a year or so ago, that's what happened. And then he's changed again to work with boosting audiences. And I think that, you know, you kind of feel your way as you go, but he went in with the expectation that he wasn't going to be right from the start. Statistically, most people aren't right. So it makes sense for you to kind of go in and go, let's give it a stab. And if it works out, great. But if not, we'll move as we go. And it just allows you to be at peace a bit with what you're doing. And Daniel here's asked, I would also like to ask for practical steps to maximize your use of LinkedIn to market your business. How does it differ from Facebook? So LinkedIn was my big prediction back in the last year, and it's starting to really show. I know LinkedIn has been able to host content for some time, but I strongly believe that it's been not dormant, but it's been quiet for a while. It's fully a social media platform now. I would put it, if I was anyone out here running a business, I would be sitting it in with my suite of platforms I'd work with. If I was with Facebook, if I'm with Instagram, fine, but I would be doing things on, you know, YouTube, I might be on Snapchat or Twitter, but I would certainly be very seriously considering LinkedIn as well. All you need to be remembering is this. LinkedIn, was it like 2007, I think, when I joined? You know, LinkedIn was very much a professional platform. It was where people just had connections. It was basically like a digital Rolodex for many. I know there are a few other things, but essentially for many, it was just like, here's what I do. Here's my CV in essence. And yeah, you could message, and that was about all there is to it. Anyone from LinkedIn would totally disagree with me, right? But that's essentially what it was seen as and used for. But the thing is, because it's now caught up with its ability to deliver content as well, it's such an important place to be. If you're a content marketer, right now, it is white hot in LinkedIn. If you want leads, if you want engagement, the algorithm is sweet as well. I mean, I went to a session on it last week, speaking to a guy that in 4 months has now got 21,000 followers, and he's just all about putting out great content every day. It's no different to a degree to Facebook, but there are a few caveats. I would say approach it from a content marketing perspective in the same way as you put out great quality value on Facebook. But remember this, Facebook is social first. And with social first, what it means is that you have to have that that fun element to it at times. You have to be a certain kind of person insofar as your vibe it shouldn't be too serious, because Facebook is where people go to socialize. So if you're overly commercial, that's when people seem to fail quite a bit with Facebook. With LinkedIn, I'm not saying you should be ultra professional, but what I do think is that it's not quite the place for you know, a meme of a cat or like a YouTube video of something stupid happening. It doesn't seem to resonate as well. It might do for some, but I think for businesses building brands and leads, constant rich content marketing, video is very important there, but so are articles. Shareability is obviously important everywhere, but you just get a huge amount of traction on LinkedIn, I think. And so it's good because you can go out there and you can say to yourself, why don't I every day add some new connections, people who, based on how because on LinkedIn, if you don't know, you have your name and then you have like a strap line of what you do, and people will write the kind of things they're into. So you can at a glance have this snapshot of how the person you're engaging with or connecting to views themselves. And so those people, the people who are, for instance, other content marketers or people interested in your space, you can see at a glance if they're going to be ripe as potential audience. So they're the ones you should be following and sort of rather connecting with. So what it means is you can kind of add friends as you go, but you can be really calculated and get some really good ones, and that boosts your opportunity to be kind of found a bit more. And you know, if you look at the way the algorithm works in LinkedIn, it moves everything from you produce your content and fire it out, and then it goes to it's seeded with a very small group, a test group of your connections, usually your first connections. That's it. It's just seeded with them to see what happens. If it picks up from a few, it will go out to a few more, and all the way through to eventually it's being shared by second and third connections on the basis that it's actually being viewed by a human being at LinkedIn who said, yeah, I deem this one's good enough to go out, and it's really starting to pop. So we've noticed it, and let's just open the floodgates so it can go out to everyone. And that's where it can really win. That's where you can kind of go semi-viral, really. So many algorithms are similar, but I think the idea here is that if you can get good content marketing out and be regular, you will win. And just like I always say, with the care approach to social media marketing, especially things like Facebook, it's here as well. So consistency, be there every day. Abundance, be there at least once a day, in my opinion. If you're not putting up an article, at least post a status that is interesting to people, but keep it focused a bit more on the business as opposed to, don't you just hate it when you overcook your jacket potato in the microwave? People are going to be like, what's this guy doing? So it doesn't really work as well. But I think then, that's important to make sure you're there abundantly. So all the time you're producing strong content so you get found more. That goes for anywhere, right? But then relevancy, as I said, is crucial there. So R in the care approach is relevancy. And then E is engagement. If anyone, and it's the thing in LinkedIn, much like anywhere else, I suppose, but really is in LinkedIn. If anyone likes or comments your stuff, you need to be engaging with them. So the engagement community I found is very good on LinkedIn. I feel it's quite polarized, Daniel. My view is that LinkedIn is a huge amount of people who are not very active and they're quite sedentary, and they're kind of, they put their information up years ago and not much has really changed. And then you've got the people who are flooding in, these content marketers who are making it quite, they're coloring the place quite well. And I think what's important is that you get early traction now. It's like land grabbing time. So get in there. I'm big focus on LinkedIn this year, and sharing a lot on there has been really successful already. So I would certainly strongly advise it. Let's move on to the next question, and here's from Andrew Hall. He's asking about FOMO. So let's look at this. He said, similar to Daniel's question, because this was on a thread on Facebook, these two. He said, is it good to taste all things while learning your niche? And by what age should you have fully decided your niche? What a question, because everyone's different, and some people have found their niche before they're even an adult, and they are right that that's their niche, and some people just don't. Some people might start late. Look, I'm 37, and I think I found my niche quite early on, but there are some people who are going to be my age or older who are just coming around to the idea of maybe doing something for themselves and deciding what their niche is. And I speak to people every single day who are trying to find their way. There's no age by which you should fully have found your niche, but except from it as soon as is possible. And you won't ever fully decide your niche, because your niche will always evolve, and you need to embrace that. You need to embrace that your demographic will evolve. If I target 19 to 23-year-olds who are stay-at-home mums, who are young mums, who are looking for a particular product area, their set of needs and interests from in 1995 are going to be different to 2005 and 2015 and 2025. They will change all the time because culture changes around the human species, and you end up with different views on the world. So I think that as a result, your demographic will change. So you need to be willing to understand your niche may evolve as well. Some things that were cool and very useful for some groups of people just aren't anymore. If you look at what the niche is, or rather the demographics of social media platforms, mostly, to start with, they actually target, well, they don't target, but they're picked up by the younger set and then eventually picked up by the older set of people and then dropped by the younger ones. Facebook is a great example of a platform that has very mature audience now, because there's billions of people here, but the very younger generation, so Generation Y, it's sometimes called, those that are in the kind of late teen bracket, many of them aren't really very active on Facebook. And I remember several years ago, my wife's cousin, who's, I think she's 20 or so, but several years ago, she would have been like 16, 17, saying, it was all for her about Snapchat. It wasn't really about Facebook, because mum and dad are on Facebook now, so Snapchat's where we hang out instead. And eventually you get the older set starting to come in where Snapchat is, and then there'll be something else as well. So it's interesting. Your niche will always change because your demographic will always change, and you will have a different worldview. What I'm into 10 years ago will be different to what I'm in now and 10 years from now as well. So, but let's get practical. So, Andrew, you said, is it good to taste all things whilst learning on a niche? Of course it is. But what I do think is that when you're building, what you need to be doing is thinking, what things are essential right now? What things do I really need to be doing? I talked in an interview recently about extremes. Some people were saying, you shouldn't be too extreme and do loads of one thing all the time. Well, that's not true. That in short bursts, it's very important to be quite extreme sometimes. For instance, when you're first starting a business, okay, it's sometimes a good idea to be very extreme on customer acquisition and on sales, because that's what you need the most of. Maybe when you're an investor, it's very extreme to do lots of focus on learning how to invest effectively, but that's maybe what you need to be doing more of. So, it is important to get that bit right. I think looking at learning your niche, there can be over-learning though. And anyone who knows me at all knows I'm big on reading and learning, but you shouldn't be overdoing it. You need execution. Again, startup phase, right? Startup is a lot about execution. Learn as you go, but not too over the top. And as I say, by what age you should fully have decided your niche? I'm not going to disregard the question, but I feel that it's not something that should be looked at, because if I was to suggest that you should have fully decided on your niche by the age of 29, and you're 29, you're going to start panicking. Like I say, I'm 37, and I think if I hadn't discovered what I was doing, but I was on the way, I just need, maybe feel a little more stressed. But the point is, you need to kind of have a bit of patience. We've probably got plenty of time still in your life, and I think it's important just to give your kind of development the patience it deserves, because you want to get it right eventually. But just don't sweat it too much. It doesn't matter, because if something's not right, it will feel not right, and then you can pivot. I know you get one shot at life and all that kind of thing, but at the same time, if you overdo it in making sure you do the right thing all the time, you get so paralyzed you don't actually do anything at all, and that slows you right down. So hopefully that answers your question there. Just think long term in terms of short term, in terms of jumping around. I mean, you've written here, Andrew, I often feel the pressure of FOMO in the business world and thought leadership. If it takes time, why rush? If it needs to be figured out now, why aren't it come fast enough? Just don't sweat the small stuff. Whatever you're doing, if it takes a long time to get there, fine, as long as you're working towards it, okay? Some things just take a long time, and that's just how it is. Push yourself, but it just don't worry so much. And fear of missing out in the business world is always going to be there. It's called marketing a lot of the time, and it's the hype people use. So I hope that helps. Ask me a bit more if you need, Andrew, because I don't want to go into too much depth on some of these questions because they require really long answers. But yeah, I hope that helps. Adam Mosley, what one tip, Richard, would you say is vital for constantly improving your business? Well, everyone says patience these days. It's getting quite fashionable, but I think in addition to patience, because patience on its own won't get you anywhere, you need consistency as well on your execution. So as long as you know you're doing the things each day to get you there, then be patient, because you've got, what that suggests is you have faith and trust in what you're doing. I have faith and trust that the things I'm currently working on are going to get me to another big milestone. I'm really excited about it. It cannot come soon enough, but I recognize that just some things take time. So a lot of moving parts going on in my world. There's a lot of other people involved as well. We're pushing as hard as we can, but just day by day, keep chipping away. That's the way to do it. So consistency, Adam, as well as patience. There are people out there who get so disheartened because and these are some of the more patient ones where it's like, I've been working on I've been on Facebook engaging every day for 2 years. Why has it not happened yet? It's just because it takes a long time, you know. People say, you know, I've been selling for like 6 months or so, I can't close anything. You know, I was selling for best part of a decade before I took it to an actual, you know, particular consulting business. So, you know, the coaching I'm doing tomorrow at a business, for instance, isn't just some training ideas I've got. It's like 17 years of experience. You know, things take time. So having that patience but consistently building on it every single day will get you there. If you look at all of the world that I have online, that only really started properly around 2015, because other than that, I wasn't really throwing it down so much here. I was much more in the bricks and mortar world. And I think or just kind of consulting via Skype or phone, and not doing so much in the kind of influencer or content space. And really 2015 was only the back end of that. So it's really been like a year and a half, 2 years or so. So, you know, you just got to take time. And I have no problem waiting as long as I know that I'm making progress. That's the thing to bear in mind. Nothing else really matters as much. Is as long as you have faith you're doing the right kind of thing and you're on the right track, just deal with it. If I want to drive across the whole country, I know it'll take a long time. So rather than getting impatient half an hour in, do you know what? Settle down, concentrate on the drive, and you'll get there in the end. You know, it's mile by mile that you have to do it. So hopefully that makes sense. Thumbs up if you believe that. Some people just have this feeling that that's a ridiculous idea. I really don't think you should be worried if you are doing the right kind of thing or taking steps that give you some element of progress, and you can actually be patient with that. You're in a great position. Just, you know, it's not a case of why rush or why worry. It's just that, you know, that's life. It's how it's going to be. Not everything can happen straight away. It's great that you want it to, and use that as your impetus to push you forward, but that's as far as it should go. Venu Morgan, who I think's on here, I just saw you jump online here. You've written influence as an online marketer. If you could elaborate on that a little here in the comments, then what do you mean there? What's the exact question? Is it you know, how do I do it, or what is it, or something like that? So you've written influence as an online marketer. Pad it out here in the comments, and I'll add a bit more in a second. Now, the next question is from Dawn Bell Diaz. And Dawn, you've said, my issue is posting on Facebook and getting people to engage. So literally, this is the thing I've just been talking about. It could be, Dawn, that you've been doing it for like 6 months and you're getting some engagement. Relatively speaking to other people, it might be that you're doing really well, but it's just what you want. Your expectations might be like, why am I not getting 1,000 people watching my video every day? Why am I not getting, you know, 300 messages? I keep seeing people who are half my age who are getting 60 comments on posts. You know what it is? It's the basics again. Are you, before even the basics, are you great at what you're doing? Is the content interesting? Is it quality? You have to be delivering very high quality content in the right ways to the right people. Otherwise, you just won't get anywhere. It doesn't matter. No matter how great your content is, if you're not distributing it in the right way or putting it on the correct platform, again, massive waste of time. You won't get anywhere. And it won't eventually get you there unless you're doing the right stuff. Okay? So, you know, for starters, make sure your content is great. So that means you've got to be good at what you're doing. If you've just plucked some new thing, for instance, this isn't hating on Bitcoin, this is just an example. If you know nothing about Bitcoin and then you picked it up 3 months ago and you're purporting to be, you know, a world-class investor with all the advice in the world, but 6 months ago you're doing something else, then think about the engagement levels you can reasonably expect. You tend to get what you deserve, right? There are probably people out there who've been in the space longer, who have the credentials, who maybe own 50 Bitcoins, and so they might have a little more to say. And I just think, you know, make sure you're strong in your space, because if you're not, sorry, because it's a democracy, you can decide, you know, people vote with their feet. The market decides who you want to go listen to. If you're not very interesting, there's another guy or another girl out there who's way more interesting and better, who's just as free online to get hold of their content. And what I mean is, you just skip to the next YouTube channel. Oh, this guy's way better. You know, if you look at someone like, Markiplier is one of the top 10 YouTubers who's making probably 12 million a year. I think it's 20 million YouTube subscribers. You know, if you want to try and be like him, you might be something similar, but unless you're like him, there's nothing to stop the audience going, I'm just going to go watch Markiplier like this guy instead. And then you fail. So you have to be good. You have to be, in fact, good's bad. You need to be great. Good is what everyone's able to get to, especially with the tools and the apps and the support and the ecosystem that can help you produce great content these days. You need to be great, okay? And the other thing is that you need to distribute it right, which means every day you need to, I feel, recalibrate right back down to zero and say to yourself, I don't expect anyone to share any of my stuff. I don't expect anyone to engage in it. And if anyone does, I'm going to go out there and be thankful. And I'm going to go out there also and I'm going to, you know, push this content out. So I'll take it where I need to. In the sensitive way, I'll be on Reddit with it. I'll then tweet about it. I'll then collaborate with people so we can share, you know, our audiences. Later today, for instance, there's an interview I did with Ben's Business Book Club with Ben Lang, and he's going to be sending it to his audience and I'll be sending it to mine. And, you know, we'll pick up followers and things like that, and potentially there'll be customers in there. So you've got to distribute well as well. But if your issue is posting on Facebook and getting people to engage, it means you've just got to keep practicing. Even now, and I'm not like the person who's leading Facebook, but I am a guy who's consistently put content on Facebook every single day for years. And I'll tell you now, every day, because of the thing I said earlier about how people change, your audience is constantly changing in their general interests, what's fashionable, what's cultural, what they want from you and things like that. And so to fuel them and their interest, what you've got to do is say, right, if I'm going to be interesting to this audience, what I've got to do is think about what they might be interested in. I need to talk in their kind of language. But I also need to engage with them first. I can't just sit back and expect these people to jump on me. And it may well be a good idea for you to engage with every single person that engages with you and even likes one of your comments or posts to start with. But there are techniques, you know, experiments. So, you know, I'll constantly now be trying different techniques to see what happens and see what works. And it might be one technique works one day and then doesn't the next because I did it a different day or a different time. You know, time zones account for a lot. A great example for me sometimes is an image. It's so perplexing sometimes because an image sometimes will make an article or a comment or a post on Facebook really pop, and then sometimes it won't at all. Sometimes you need a bit more humor, sometimes you don't. It's just very difficult, but you've got to constantly be experimenting. But little by little, across the years, you'll get there. If you want it overnight, you can't expect that to happen because it takes time for you to build that kind of trust and for Facebook to recognize you're a decent provider of content as well. But get out there and make sure you engage with people and actually bring them in. Not, hey, come and look at this, but, you know, in the comments underneath one of your posts, tag a couple of people who you know, not spamming, but that you know are relevant there and saying, what do you think about this? Or are you relevant here as well? If you spam not the full 100 people, if you tag them all in a post because you hope they'll all share it, you're going to throw away much more of your audience than you'll gain. But if you strategically and carefully tag a couple of people, not the same guys over and over again, but ones that are vocal, ones that talk, ones that are relevant to that space, ones who would appreciate it, you'll then start leveraging their audience as well. They may even put it on their timeline. So, you know, these are all techniques, but all that's on YouTube. You know, it's all there for you to go learn. What you can't do is think, I'm not getting any engagement, so it doesn't work. Facebook is an amazing platform, but you've got to just work with it. You'll learn how to use it, and you've got to experiment, because even if you feel you've cracked it, you'll then lose it for a bit and you have to kind of go back. Some days you can't move for amazing engagement. If I look at my group, just as a finish up point here, if I look at the Entrepreneur Business Group, which by the way you should all be in, so if you go to search groups in Facebook, is Entrepreneur Business Group. If you look at some of the posts, some of them have got 100 comments against them, huge amount of people involved, and then some literally get no interest at all, no engagement whatsoever, and you just think, what's going on there, and sometimes I'll post on my profile and I'll get share after share after share, and then sometimes literally nothing, and just think, it's about experimenting, because there's different people around the world at different time zones wanting different things, and it's a constant fun thing to be working with. So you do over time get better. It's not experimenting every day. Over time, you tend to find what your audience is into, and you can stick with that. So bear that in mind. I just wanted to go back to Venu's question. Before I do, though, I just really am feeling so good today. Thank you so much for jumping in, everyone who's listening right now and everyone who listens later on. Episode 80, I'm truly proud of this. I'm really pleased. Obviously, I'm excited about episode 100, which is only about less than a half year away. But to do 80 episodes means I just did some rough maths. It's probably over 600 questions that you lot have asked over the years. For constantly people to be jumping in, and across the week, then we get hundreds and hundreds of views. It really means a lot. And YouTube, it's doing really well with the interest there. So thank you so much. It means so much to me, and there's nothing stopping us keep going, because the questions keep coming every week. So thank you. Venu, you've asked a little earlier, influence as an online marketer, and then you added, how do I do it? If you want to have influence, and there are people who are far better at me, people who are far higher in their ability to reach out and be influential. But what I would say is, I've had plenty of companies reach out to me and offer money and things like that, and some I've worked with on campaigns as an influencer in their eyes. And it all comes down to being very clear with your message. I think one of the main things is about having a pure signal. If consistently every day you're putting out great quality content around the same kind of space, you tend to find that you pick up loads of people who stick. Okay, very few people who have sent me a friend request on Facebook have done so for reasons outside of businessy, entrepreneur, sales, marketing kind of space. It's not just random. It's because there's that pure signal. It's very obvious what I do and the space I work in by watching and looking at any of my content for any amount of time. It just becomes quite obvious. So in order to be an influencer as an online marketer, you have to provide this content that's a pure signal. I strongly urge you, all of you, whatever you're doing, even if you're not an online content marketer, to produce content, because it's a great way of sharing what you're doing, and your footprint really is important to get right online, I believe, especially as we move ahead through the years. And I think that when it comes down to trying to be influential, it's far better to focus on trying to get out your great message and distribute that widely, and let the market decide and let people decide if you've got something to say. It's stunning to me how people complain about not getting opportunities, and yet when you just apply yourself consistently for some amount of time, they start coming out of nowhere. It's really difficult after a while, because you get messages popping up all the time saying, hey, can you look at this? Have you got a time to speak to me about that? Or are you interested in this proposal? This kind of thing is constant when you are just putting out good quality content. I do think as well, you need to understand what you're good at. I love being on camera, but I also really like writing as well. And so I focus mostly on article generation and on video. I don't do memes quite as much. I don't do the long, profound quotes or sob stories about my past life so much. I try and be a bit more practical, and that turns off some people, turns on others. So kind of know what your strengths are and what you're good at and what you do well, and it's really what you want to naturally gravitate towards and stick with that. That tends to help. Thumbs up everyone if that makes sense. If any of you got other experiences there, I'd love to hear them, but that's how I feel about it. Because the other thing, Venu, is just to simply wait patiently whilst you are pushing yourself out there and trying to reach to people and getting yourself involved with different meetings. And if people are asking you to do interviews, you say yes, all that kind of thing. But be patient as well, because becoming in any way influential as a content marketer does take time, because people got to get to know you. Even on day one with your first post, someone who loved it, still needs to build some element of trust around you. Okay, so it does take a bit of time. You've got to embrace that, really. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening on that one, because I think it's a very important question. But let's go on to the next one here. So Daniel Nunes asked another one, actually. He said, I was once told that in sales, so actually, let me go back. That's because one thing just popped to my head. I suppose the summary for you, Vanu, is be great, but also be where attention is as well, okay? And consistently. Be great and be where attention is consistently, and I think you won't go far wrong in terms of becoming more influential as a content marketer. So Daniel Nunes has asked, when I was once told that in sales we need to seek and use a client's pain and leverage it against them. How can you use it as an incentive rather than shaming them into action? Well, one thing is that it shouldn't be coming from you. It should be coming from them. I remember it's happened a few times in the past where bad salespeople have called me up and tried to shame me and it was too obvious. They were making me feel bad about the situation I was in. And I was just like, if you make me feel bad, you do it like actively by saying it as a salesperson. I'm not going to feel good about this conversation at all. And it's less effective than if you take me to a place emotionally where I then bring forward something that's a problem to me, and I talk about that pain, and you, instead of selling at me, you consult with me and you help me through it by way of saying, okay, to explain kind of what was going on there and explain what you think really a good solution is, and then talk about, you know, how we can improve things, and then an offer of a solution. That's a far more effective way of doing it. It needs to be a tool you use, but in a very careful way, one where it's information volunteered by the prospect and you don't dwell on it too much. You need to show them you're taking them through a process to get them to a solution. Like I said a moment ago, when people feel like you're helping them buy rather than selling at them, there's a massive difference. Metaphorically, instead of facing each other nose to nose, you're standing shoulder to shoulder, and you're kind of working through something together. So instead of a salesperson, you're more consultative, and it really has a profound difference because they feel like that you're on their side as an extension of their thought process rather than pressuring. And I think that, yes, clients' pain is valuable in a sale, but it needs to come from them. You don't need to ram it down their throat because they get it, but you need them to probably elaborate, just sensitively elaborate on the, I suppose, the implications of what would happen if they didn't fix it. But very swiftly you can move on to, so what do you think the solution would be? What would help you here? And then offer that solution. And so what happens is that they'll feel bad for a bit, but it's self-inflicted to a degree. They'll feel bad for a bit, but then you'll take them out of that, and they'll thank you for that, and they'll feel good. So it's used as a tool, but in a very careful way. So that's what I would say. Just be careful not to try and suggest that they have problems. Let them be the one to volunteer that information. It's far more effective because then they feel like they've got control about saying it. Otherwise, you'll make it feel awkward. They'll start to not feel great about the conversation. That's a big turn off. Barriers come up and the rapport drops, and of course, then you've got problems. Let's do one more question, unless anyone else has got questions here, and we'll finish up otherwise. So Alex Miropo Hara, who is in Australia and I believe is about to win or has been as a finalist in an award for her small business. So congratulations to you. Hey, Richard, I'd love to hear about comparing alternate routes to market. I'm edging into affiliate and into an affiliate sales model. You can compare them. I think you should try them. Just try different routes to market. Like I suggested at the top of this session about, deciding what your niche is and kind of just jumping in and trying and knowing that it probably won't be the thing you end up doing, that you may have to move as you go. Carson, hi, thanks very much for joining in here. I feel a good way to do this is to try the different things. So for instance, I have affiliate marketers who are selling some of my courses. That's not the route to market. It's one I've tried. In addition to that, I have email newsletters that are crafted in the way that eventually will have a way in which people can buy those courses. I will personally do incentives in my Facebook group with 3,500 people every so often that says, here's what's going on. The winner, here's a question, or whatever. The winner will get access to a course for free. And then I've got a guy who is looking after my Facebook ads for me. So he will, will put ad spend against funnels that will then help people buy the courses. So there's a load of different ways of doing it. There's things that have worked and there's things that haven't. All of them do work, just so you know. They all do work. Affiliate marketing, emails, even sending a letter works. But to varying degrees, based on what you do, and to varying degrees, of course, this is the important bit, based on how good your execution is. This is like when people say, oh, Facebook ads don't work. That's bullshit. Of course they work. You aren't doing them properly. Or you need work. You're the one that needs help with it. So you need to think to yourself, what things do I understand well? What things can I do? What things can I streamline, be fairly streamlined about? If you're a good content producer or video, your YouTube channel is a good idea to build, because that can then funnel people off to your product. If you're good at writing, get the emails going out, for instance. There's a lot of different routes to market. I think you should be trying them all, giving them a good shot, a serious shot, and then moving from there. So in play at the moment, for me, is the affiliate thing, as well as Facebook ads and a couple of other things, all to sell 2 types of course I have. So it's interesting to see how they do. If one's doing really well and one's not doing so well, will I bin off that other one? No, unless it's a complete drain on resources and doesn't make enough profit. It might be that it just doesn't make as much as the other one. I think it's intelligent to use a number of sources, because sometimes some dry up and you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. Okay, that's why I have several businesses, because doing the taekwondo on its own makes some income, but it's better to have several others as well. I'm not diversifying myself too much. I'm doing the stuff I do well, okay, and I'm not doing other things. I haven't opened a florist, right, because it's not really my space, but I have opened businesses that do specific things that play to my strengths. There's another question in here from you, Alex. It says the brand and other impact of risks of running out of stock. So product-based businesses or service capacity. This is something I think you should study and look into. Apple, I think it was Apple. Apple famously moved to a just-in-time model with inventory, which is, they, rather than having a load of stock, it was as it was ordered, it was made and then shipped out. And there was a lot of controversy and change. And if you read the originals by Adam Grant from Wharton, he actually talks in there about a moment when it was going to be changed, and they just kind of they try these different ways of doing it. The very traditional approach is just have masses of inventory. I think you're going to get better over time. My strong suggestion is nowadays there are so many deep learning or intelligent apps or pieces of software that can manage your inventory effectively and that can suggest ahead of time what you'll need to have. And I can't remember who it was I was speaking with recently, but I had a meeting with someone who was talking about software in their business that orders. No, yeah, that's what it was. It was a mining company that orders. I think they're in Canada. So imagine. So this is what it was. They're a very remote business in Canada, operating a mine, so drilling into rock and things like that. It's very remote, and it takes something like, I think it's like 40 days or something insane for something to be machined at their workshop back at HQ, and then shipped and then driven over and all of that over these mountains or whatever to get to this mine. So what they do is every single thing down to nuts and bolts on the equipment is on a database with an expected life cycle and how long it would last. So they order and ship to themselves items they're going to need before they are needed. So they know that probably around the next month from now, X, Y, and Z will fail or break, and so they'll need replacement parts, and they're already in the warehouse. else, or the workshop. Obviously things happen, but that's the way it works. So there's just in time model, and then there's the ahead of time model. So ordering, that would be like shipping, right? That would be like shipping me a book that I haven't ordered yet to arrive in 2 weeks' time, because in 2 weeks' time I'll probably want to buy that book. There's an amazing level of doing it. But I think my point is that there's a lot of apps and software that can help you with inventory. I think the important thing to do is to make sure you're engaged with your audience. If they love your brand, if they love you, and they think, if they're evangelize about what you do, it's likely that their tolerance will be higher for any issues if you have to slow down your delivery dates because of an inventory issue. Okay, so running out of stock's a really great problem to have, because it means you're selling stock properly. I think you need to keep a very, very close eye early on what's selling. One way around this is, as a startup, is instead of adding more lines to more product lines, because that's going to kill potentially capital, is keep it quite tight to start with, so that you only need to buy in less items of stock for inventory, so that you can cover all of your sales rather than spreading yourself too thinly. So that might help. But yeah, if you want to ask a bit more deeper question on that, then DM me, Alex. You'd actually ask a third point as well, which was, how do you approach first e-newsletters? What works, what definitely doesn't, what brand voice should I take? Brand voice, by the way, is kind of your tonality, or how you come across in how you write. I think a brand voice should just be you. It should be colloquial. I think it should be, just like a conversation, and kind of how you would talk. Those that like your content, especially if you do video like this, they want to almost hear you. I know some guys, there's a few newsletters I read rather, and I can hear that guy's voice as I read it out myself. So so that's important. Be still you. If you can have a ghostwriter, fine, but you better read it before you send it out, because it needs to reflect the way you write. Otherwise, it's just a bit weird, because your audience will be used to you being a certain way, even if you don't produce video and it's just via articles you've written. But then if there's a newsletter and it's clearly written by someone else, they're like, what's up here? It doesn't make sense. Okay. Some people have tried, I've seen it. Some people have actually tried having newsletters go out not by the influencer, but by like a VP or someone else who say, hey, it's me speaking on behalf of this person. So you kind of get used to that other guy, because maybe he's a better copywriter. And that's a very good way of being very, very open and transparent with your audience. But you will lose some engagement, because it's you they're falling in love with. But what works for me is constant value, is consistency as well. Don't overdo the newsletters every single day. Gets a bit stressful unless it's a quick blog. Seth Godin's newsletter, or blog that comes into the inbox every day, is fine, because it's not too long, and it's obviously something I've subscribed to. But he's done that since years ago, and as a result you kind of almost expect it. But other people, when it's constantly battering you with the obvious sales copy that's going to end up with an offer, it's like you just get turned off, and you're actually not going to bother reading it. I feel you should start small, little snippets here and there, rather than long-winded copy all the time. You can build up. Use an autoresponder, kind of like GetResponse or MailChimp, and set them up. So if someone jumps onto your newsletter or your email list for their first email that's automated, it's something simple, welcome them and a bit of value and so on, and then get a bit more in depth as you go. But probably the biggest tip for me with e-newsletters, especially early on, and when you've not really converted any of them yet, is to make sure you're giving great value first and foremost. And as your offer, right, if you're going to make an offer or have a call to action, almost have it as an afterthought at the end. Because here's the science: if someone reads a bit of your e-newsletter and then closes it, they weren't going to buy. They weren't going to buy because they weren't really interested in your content. So if they're not interested in your value content, they're definitely not going to be interested in your ask. Okay, so what you need to do is leave your ask to the very bottom. This has just worked for me. Leave your ask to the very bottom, because those that get to the very bottom are the ones that would buy anyway. because they love your stuff, which is why they've read it all, right? So you add all that value, then at the end, I would actually put it as a PS. The PS, if you're interested, or if you're still reading, but if you're interested, there's this that's happening, or check out this, and you put your link in or something like that with a, if you want this, if you'd like to access this, or if you'd like this benefit, then check this out. It's very good because you're only servicing people who've read the whole thing. You're filtering really well. Someone's read all that value, is engaged, and so then I give them that ask. They're going to be in a good place. They've invested time. They've settled into reading it. They're going to be much more receptive to clicking on that link or doing that call to action. If I stick the call to action in right at the start or quite early on, I will lose a lot of people that I might have converted if I'd let them read the whole thing. Okay, and those that wouldn't convert, I'm just going to piss them off. The way you need to look at it, if you look at the inverse in action as well, is those that won't buy, who aren't engaged, I really don't want to have my ask in front of them. I want them out of the way. Those that wouldn't buy, who aren't going to engage, I need to be giving them the best value I can possibly give them. Value first, ask right at the end. Okay, try as a PS, it's quite effective, and then you can retarget and things like that. So hopefully that helps. And that shows you the idea of what definitely doesn't work as well. Let's finish up. There's some really deep questions. DM me anyone who wants to ask any more. But thanks very much for asking. So Daniel, Andrew, Adam, Venu, Dawn, and Alex, and whoever else asked questions as well. Thank you. It was wonderful. Episode 80 is done, and I'm really proud of it. And thank you so much for jumping in. Any more questions, let me know. Thanks everyone in advance for listening on the podcast and on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. If you go to YouTube/Richard Moore Official, I'm right there. And I would love to see you on that as well. Any comments you've got, that would be useful. But otherwise, have a great Monday. Thanks so much. And I'll catch you really soon. Have a wicked day, whatever you're doing. Thanks so much. Take care.